Alright, so basically we have this GitHub repo. We're building the nonprofit navigator. I'm going to go over to the Figma. I'm going to post the Figma in the chat. So if anyone has not accessed the Figma yet, feel free to just click this link, ask me for approval, and I'll invite you in. And then also for this GitHub repo, if you can see, if we go to settings and I click on collaborators and teams, that we have most people are part of the session. Most people are already member. If you're not a member yet, just send me your email address and I will add you to this repo. And then yeah, as far as making contributions and doing issues, that'll be more on the intermediate JavaScript. We'll talk more about collaborating on the project and that sort of thing. Yeah. And so the code that we have so far, let me go ahead and invite everybody in. So I'm going to just post it right here. Feel free to click that link and hop into my code editor. I'll give everybody just a couple of minutes to actually pop in, and then we'll start reviewing and checking out this code. So I want to make sure everybody understands what's going on here. I want to make sure everybody understands like the functions, the methods, everything we got going on here. All right, we got T and Liz. Just wait for Parker, and I don't know if James is coming in. Looks like we got a new person today. Joseph, what's going on? Joseph might just be watching. I don't know if Joseph signed up for the membership. If not, he's just hanging out watching. And then
I won't be in for another 20 minutes. But I got it's on.
Say that again.
I won't have my laptop for another 20 minutes. I'm just using my phone, so but I can watch the conference.
All right, cool. So let me just ask this. Who knows why we only have a main element inside of our HTML and we don't have anything else? Who knows why we don't have any HTML in here?
Well, we want the JavaScript to do all of the rendering, but I can't remember why we want the JavaScript to do it. For simplicity, just keep all the JavaScript file, I guess.
Mm-hmm. So we're rendering all of our HTML with JavaScript. Cool.
Yeah, I had this question yesterday, like having HTML as like a fallback, but for this case, you're saying we don't really need it for now.
No, we don't need it. I mean, I assume if you're building a website for the US market, you don't have to worry about that.
Hey Jim, I'm just a little curious.
Hey.
What do you mean by we don't have an HTML?
So if you come to you're in the HTML file right now, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So inside our HTML file, we have all of the code, basically our metadata here. Let me go ahead and just navigator. So you come to our body and you see that we have a nav and we have a footer, but our main is just this element right here. Like we actually, there's no like content in this main. Why?
Oh, you mean it's not in the navigations or in the body? Well, it's definitely in the body, right?
It's in the body. It's just not in the navigation, and there's no actual content in our main.
Well, we need that to link to the JavaScript.
Yes. Let me slide the index over here. So if you look at what we have so far, just a super basic version of the volunteer search card feature. This is what renders. So how are we getting this volunteer card? This beautiful volunteer card. Where is this coming from?
Shouldn't it be coming from the navigation?
The navigation here?
Yeah.
How so?
Because nav bars, it says render volunteer list, render home. There's a home and volunteer tab. So that goes with that.
Yeah, so if I click on the volunteer or I
Yeah.
click on home, then
Mhm.
the functions execute and they show me the volunteer list and they
Right.
show me the home. But
So I guess yeah.
if I first navigate to this page, this automatically loads. How is this automatically loading if I've never clicked one of these buttons?
Well, so I guess my question to you is why don't we put the main class above the not yeah, above the nav, so just like slightly underneath the body or under the body tag.
Well, we want our navigation at the top and our footer at the bottom. Why would we put the main above the nav?
Mm, right, because it reads line by line, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, okay.
It's
So
kind of like all the meats in the middle.
Yeah, we want to keep the main content in the middle. Though when we first navigate to the page, we have an empty main or a root, but for some reason we actually have something rendering. So where is this rendering from?
the main
Coming from our functions in main.js.
Yes, exactly. So we know where it's loading. It's loading in this file somewhere here, this JavaScript file that's becoming unmanageable. And it's loading, it's rendering when we load, right? So we added an event listener to the entire window object, which is the global object in web development. And we're saying when the page loads, render home. So we come here, render home. And does someone want to explain what this function is doing here?
isn't that rendering the home page, the volunteer?
Yes, exactly. You want to tell me what each line is doing?
So const let render home into let the main document dot get the element main page. So main page, it's rendering the main page. And we're allowing the markup to render back to the HTML. Yeah, that's all I got.
All right, so where is this located?
It's located in the main page.
In the main page?
Yeah, main. We're identifying main to the document dot get element by D. That's a function, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. So we're targeting an element. We're targeting an element that exists on the HTML document. So if we come over to the HTML doc, well, let's look at this line 107 first. Line 107, document. We're getting the element by ID. So that means we're going to be searching the document. We're going to be searching for an element by ID, and the ID is going to say main page. So if you come back to our document, our HTML, you can see that this element here has an ID of main page. So this is the element we're actually targeting. So we're storing a reference to this right here inside this variable here.
Right.
And then we're go ahead.
So markup. So where's the markup part?
Markup is right here.
Well, I mean, like, isn't there markup somewhere around the index HTML? Or no?
No. So basically what we're doing is we're storing a reference to our main element inside this main variable. We're creating this markup, which is just a string right now. And then we are setting main. So a reference to our main element in our HTML, line 17. We're setting its inner HTML to markup. So basically what we're doing is we're
okay.
targeting this element on line 17 and we're injecting that.
Right.
We're setting its inner HTML to that value. So we end up with this, and that's how this is rendering here.
Right.
But we don't actually have to put it there. We just
So the dot inner HTML, that's just appending what we wanted to both of the variables.
yes. Yeah, you could
Is that
add
the right word? Appending.
huh?
That's the right word. Is appending to those variables.
Yeah, you could call it appending. Technically you're technically
adding.
you're appending it to the main. You're adding it. Yep. Inner HTML is just a way to set it. So let's just say that there was already so let's add a couple here. Let's say H1. Hey. And then we have like an H2. Hey too. So our document is going to start with this, right? And what do you guys think is going to happen when I refresh this? Is it going to have these two elements and our volunteer card, or is it just going to have our volunteer card?
I think it's gonna have the hey and the hey 2, but it's gonna be like heading 1 and heading 2.
Oh, you could see them too. See when I refresh over and over, you could see hey and hey 2 popping up there.
But that's on the console.
No. Look behind. Look really quickly.
Yeah,
if
like
you're looking,
flashes really quickly.
Yeah, they flash. So they were there, but then they're overwritten. So the inner HTML is actually replacing all of the HTML that's inside. But if we did, if we took this markup and let's just say we did like let new element equals document dot create element, and we'll just create like a new H3, and then we do new element dot new element dot inner HTML equals markup. We actually have to put this underneath.
Why do we have to do it twice?
Do what?
We say let main equal document get element ID equal the main page, and then further down we're doing the same thing.
Where?
Okay.
Are you talking about a totally different function?
Okay, those are functions.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, function.
Yeah. These are totally
So it's
different.
it's only within the scope of the function.
Yes. Yeah. So within this function, for us to target this main element, we have to create a reference for this main element.
But can't we just do it once outside of the function?
We could.
So if we did it once outside of the function, it goes through the whole scope of the main jet. Well, why are you doing it twice then? I mean, you're saying we could do it both ways, right?
Yes.
So why are we doing it in each function? Is there a reason for it, or it's
just for people to get the hands-on experience? Because we're actually going to be doing something entirely different later.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's just for experience. Good question. So we create a new element, we create our markup, we inject our markup into the new element, and then we do main dot append child new element. Now what happens? What's going to happen when I refresh this? So we're starting with our main, we have our H1, our H2, and then, so I changed this function. Now instead of injecting our markup into the main as inner HTML, now we're injecting our markup into our new element. So into our H3, which is interesting because it's gonna kind of like
Oh.
look like this. Which,
Yeah, it's gonna say the hey with the two TOO, right?
yeah, so now it's gonna look like this, which is kind of weird anyways. But so what are we gonna get?
Hey with the two, with a TOO.
Let's check it out. There we go. So
Oh,
now
hang
we're-
on. So it ended up getting the first H1 and H2 and H3. I thought it was just gonna be only H3.
Well,
Oh,
because with the append child, we're not replacing the entire inner HTML of the main. We're just adding a new element onto the existing elements. So if there's already existing elements in our main class, the append child is not going to affect those. It's just going to add one to the end. So it's going to keep these ones that already exist, and then this volunteer card that we created is going to be appended onto the main. So it'll keep all of the elements. Whereas if we just set the main's inner HTML, it's going to replace any HTML that was there before. So I just wanted to show you the difference.
sorry. Just Robert, because we're on the subject. Is there any way that you can make it so that it spits out hey just two, not hey with the colon. I mean, with the exclamation point twice. Or do you have to or you have to like delete line 18?
Yeah, you could remove children.
Oh. So then how would that look? Hey two.
You want to remove.
No. Like leave that there, but go back to the .js. I just want to see like how would it look if you wanted to just say hey two, not the hey exclamation. Can you make it like that? Like, can you write that code up? I don't.
Yeah.
What would be the code for that?
So let me think. I believe it would be like document, remove child, and then you could choose the specific node. So let's say what's this one called? H1. Let me target it somehow and just do first. So that's our first. If we wanted to do that, we could do something like let first equals document, get element by, by ID, first. And then, but you want to render it, you want to do what we did before too with the H3.
Well, so all I want is for it to show hey TOO, not hey exclamation point.
All right, but do you still want the card to render too though, right?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so let's go ahead and do what we did before then. Create element. We have our H3. We set our new element dot inner HTML equals markup. And then, so here we are targeting the main element. So we're going to target this element right here, or at least get a reference to it. We're going to create a new element. So we're going to create an element to basically, I'm going to go ahead and just do a div. We're going to create a div for us to put our markup inside of. And then instead of doing inner HTML, we'll do append child, new element. So what should this do?
Okay, so if we go line by line, 106, it's calling back the main page. Then it's creating a new element from the div. And then on the third, it's creating a first document.get element, the first. So it's gonna spit out first document. It will remove the it'll move the first, right? And then it'll go to
I think this returns the one that was removed too.
oh, I see. And then it's getting rid of it. It calls it, but then it's getting rid of it. But then it's going to spit out the second part because we're still calling the whole function.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah,
Jim,
let's see that.
Jim, when you create the div, right?
Mm-hmm.
Can you create the ID too? I see you're creating an element div. Can you create the element ID first? For instance, in the HTML, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you have to have the any IDs other than the main element at all? You're creating elements with JavaScript. I've never really did that. I just put everything on my HTML. But you're rendering it to create it with JavaScript. So when you create the div, can you also create an ID for the div so you can get and change things by the ID? Or does the ID have to be in the page itself?
Can you create an element with an ID?
Yes. You're creating the div, right? The div isn't there in the first place. So can you get
You could create a div with an ID. Yeah. So after creating this div, so let's just say we create this div right here, I could just do like new element dot ID and set it to whatever I want to set it to.
Okay,
Though I don't typically create, like, this is one way you could do it. Like, you could create elements like this and you could remove elements like this, but I don't typically use those. I typically use markup and enter HTML. So I'm just most of the time I'm just replacing whatever HTML existed with markup that I created, and probably injected some data into as well. So these, like, you could do it with these methods, but I don't typically do it, honestly. Unless for like learning, it's good, you know.
It doesn't have to be named markup. It can be let anything equal the div, right?
Yeah, that's just an identifier, this name.
Identify. Okay, and the reason we're rendering things with JavaScript is because it does it faster and you don't have to have multiple pages. Is that the reason?
The reason why we're doing this is strictly learning. Like I said,
okay.
I typically don't do it programmatically like this. I just use markup and I inject it into the HTML. So like creating, or like the other night we had Angel create this. I would never do this, because you look at this right here, all this code right here, creating elements, adding classes and all that stuff, and I did the same exact thing right here. Look how much smaller it is. It's like under 15 lines of code versus freaking almost double, basically double, doing it programmatically like that, you know.
So you can really just put everything on the HTML page if you wanted to. I mean, we're doing this to learn, and I know there's going to be reasons for you to do it, but you could just put everything on the HTML page, right?
You could, if you're building a static site, like a blog maybe, or a portfolio. Yeah. But if what you're rendering to the screen is gonna change depending on the data that you have, then yeah, that's not really gonna work out for too long.
You could.
As the complexity, as the need need for dynamicism increases, like as you start using outside data to render your HTML, you
Okay,
can't
when
you can't
you say outside data, you're talking about data that you fetch from a database or something,
yeah, or an API or wherever.
which is beyond the scope of what we're doing, right?
Yeah, so you're gonna have to modify you're gonna need to use JavaScript to modify your HTML. Like if you're just building a site with HTML and CSS, then sure, it makes sense to just write all HTML. I have another project I can show you where it's like there is some pre-coded JavaScript. Basically, they have like on the left they have an aside, on the right they have like a main, and on the top there's a navigation, and those three are pre-rendered. So you have your navigation and search, you have an aside, and then you have a main body, and those three stay there no matter what. But what's rendered inside of them changes based on the JavaScript and the data that you get. So it depends on what your project is. It depends on the requirements of the projects at the end of the day. All right, so we're still getting hey and hey too. What's the problem here?
Wait, what happened to the card? Volunteer card went away.
Yep.
Why? I mean,
So what's happening here? So we have our main. We're targeting this here. When we first click this, we're rendering H1 and H2. We're creating our new element. Our new element is a div. We are getting an element by ID. So this element by ID that we're getting is the hey. We are removing this element. Let me console.log just to give some clarity. And then we're creating our markup. I changed it to identified. Let me change it just to show James that you could use any name here. We're injecting this markup into our new element. So we're injecting it into our div. So we're injecting a div with an ID, a volunteer search home, and an H2 of volunteer into our new element. And then
yeah, but that card doesn't show up though.
we're
It's not showing up.
Say that again?
So, but volunteer card is not showing up though, even though you're saying that we injected the div ID.
Mm-hmm.
Volunteer heading 2 is not showing up.
Failed
Should
to
we
execute
check that
remove
box?
child node. The node to be removed is not a child of this node.
So you can't remove first because it's not a child.
Yeah, so what's the problem? What's the problem here? Take a guess. So we're trying to remove first from the document, but for some reason it's not being removed from the document. Why?
Because it's not a child. It's not a child
It's not a child of what?
of the parent. I don't know, of the home, I guess. I don't.
Let me ask you this. We're trying to remove this one, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is a child of which element?
Of the class main div.
Of the main div, right?
Mm-hmm.
But we're trying to remove it from document. So we're just we're just removing it from the wrong element. So go ahead and change this line of code to remove the child from the correct element. Go ahead.
From the main element.
Yeah, give it a shot.
I don't know. I'm really just guessing.
Close. So you did change. So we still wanna remove the child, right? This we want to stay the same. But we don't want to remove it from the document. We want to remove it from the main.
Main. It would be called main then. From main. Oh, I see. Okay. Yeah, not from the document.
We
From
got
main.
an M right there. Is
Okay.
this gonna work, everyone?
I'll
What do you think, Parker?
try and see.
saved.
Yes.
Boom. So now you can see that our first was removed, our H2 stayed, our card stayed, and yeah. So yeah, you could remove. I typically don't use this. Sometimes I use it with like, yeah, I can't say I never use it, but not a lot.
Maybe in like a conditional rendering situation, maybe.
Yeah, I think like sometimes you'll like let's just say for an example, just for an easy application that comes to my mind, like if you're building like a notes or a to-do, a task-oriented application, and each one of the tasks have an ID, and you want to remove childs based on their ID when you click like the X button or the delete task button or something. So there's definitely times where you could remove it, but it all depends on the way you want to do it. There's, as you know, so many different ways to do different things, especially with vanilla JS.
I mean, I just think like that would be so dope. I mean, I think what I'm learning from here is understanding how to type this stuff up. So whether or not I use it or not, it doesn't really matter at this point. It's just understanding like where things go and how things kind of flow, if you know what I mean.
Yes, the functionality that exists. Yeah, so you could see main.remove child, and yeah, this does remove the one that was removed. So you actually get a reference to the element that was removed when you call this too. So we have inner HTML. I think this should actually, there we go. So now we could delete these. We don't need them. They were just for learning purposes. And yeah, now we could render this. So let me see if we're getting any errors here. So when we click this, we're not going anywhere. We're actually supposed to be going to the volunteer page. So the same way I click on volunteer and I go to the volunteer. I click on home and I go to the home. When I click on this volunteer, I'm supposed to go to the volunteer page, but it's not working. Does anyone know why?
We have to create a get element by ID.
Get element by ID on this one here.
I'm sorry. Yeah. We have to create an element. So like when someone clicks on the volunteer, we have to create a get element function. Or is it function or I can't remember if it's a function or yeah, it has to be a function. Yeah, it's a function, yeah.
I would say if it's a function that lives on an object, so like this document is an object and get element by ID is a function that lives on the object, I just call it a method. And if it's just like a function like this here, this is just a function. It doesn't live inside of an object. It's just like a standalone function that executes. But if the function is inside of an object and you're calling it on an object, so if it's like object dot function, method is a little bit more accurate as far as vocab, like the lingo goes for that sort of thing. But they are technically both functions, yeah.
Oh, okay, so then we have to create a method. So for when someone clicks on volunteer, there would be a functionality to it.
Okay. So we need to add an event listener to this element here, right?
Yeah, I've been calling it something else. I said get element by ID, but I was thinking event listener.
So let me ask you this. Where are we going to create that event listener? Now, before you answer though, think about yesterday, how we had to add this event listener to the bottom of this function because this markup didn't exist yet until we rendered it right here. So we had to wait until we rendered the markup and then we were able to create the event listener. So we were running document.getElementById on the search button, but the search button didn't exist. The search button is right here. So we had to wait until we actually created this markup then took the markup and injected into the main div. And then once we inject it into the main div, this is the line that changed the HTML document. So once we change the HTML document, now this now exists on the HTML document. And since this now exists on the HTML document, then we could target that element. But we can't target that element until it exists. So we want to target this element. This one exists on the home page, not the volunteer list page. So where are we gonna, and anyone can answer this, Liz, Parker.
What is the gray box called? Is it our volunteer card?
It is this right here. Our volunteer search home. Which there's definitely a better name for that, but someone named it that.
We would have to inject it in there, don't we? An event listener inside of the render home.
Mm-hmm.
So it would be like right underneath div.
Mm-hmm.
Minus the what do you call it? Semicolon? Yeah.
Underneath, well, we're creating, so on these lines of code right here, we're creating this string and we're storing this string into the markup variable. But we haven't yet injected this HTML into our document yet. So where do we inject this HTML into our document?
After line 113.
Yeah, so 113, this is where we actually take our markup that we created and we store it. We change our document. So after 113 is correct. That's
Okay.
what we're gonna need.
Sorry, got it.
Do your thing. And if you're, you could always look at line 139 and 140 if you're like, how do I do this again? They're almost identical with just different IDs, basically. Nice. Cool. One day we need to just dedicate time to like going through this whole thing and getting good names. One day we'll do it. We'll do it when we actually when we start thinking about like architecture and breaking into different areas. Though, naming is sort of like an introductory topic though, isn't it?
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah.
It's kind of like one of those things that, like, as you go, you're like, oh yeah, you need to do this.
Yeah. And as you build cooler and better features, it gets like, you just get further and further from it, and then eventually it's just like buried under a stack of a cool application. And then whoever works on it later is like, who named this stuff? Yeah, we'll spend some time going through and just coming up with like more precise names. That'll be better. So, cool.
I'm kind of stuck with what I should name. I'm guessing it would just be volunteer list.
So we're calling a function, right? Because there's a callback function that you're passing into this add event listener method. What actually do we want to run? When we click this button, what do we want to run? What do we want to happen?
We want it to go to the volunteer list. Oh, I forget what we named it. I have to go back.
So when I click this volunteer on the navigation, same thing, right? We want to go to the volunteer list page. So check out the navigation on the HTML.
Okay, so it's called render volunteer list is what it is.
Yes.
Render volunteer list. Okay.
Mhm.
So then render volunteer list.
Perfect. Cool, cool. Everything looks good. Now, all right.
Wait,
What? Semicolon?
no. So here, your
Where?
ID
Where are
is on 115 in main.
you? Okay.
The ID we want to grab is the volunteer search home, right?
We want to grab. Yes. Volunteer search home.
So yeah, you just want to make sure, T, that you're grabbing something that already exists, so that we like are acting on the correct thing.
Yes. Where'd you get this volunteer click from, T? Where'd you get that name
Oh,
from?
let's see. Oh, never mind. I don't know. I made it up. I mean, I don't know where we.
Yeah. So when we don't create something here, we're going to act on the thing that is
108.
already in
Okay,
existence.
so it says volunteer click, volunteer search. So I'm looking for that ID. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, because otherwise it would be looking for this ID called volunteer click.
The ID. Yeah, that's the ID that. Yep.
Yep.
Yep. And since this volunteer click does not exist, let's go ahead and just console that log and see what we get. If we try to target an ID that does not exist, let's go ahead and, all right, cannot read properties of null. So this right here, this is just null. This didn't return any value because it searched the document and it didn't find a document with an ID. So it's just null. So when you call add event listener, you're adding this to something that doesn't exist. And there's no add event listener on the null object. You can't just do null.add event listener. So
I forget why I put volunteer click. I don't know where I got that information from. I think I was looking at the example, prior example. I think that's what happened.
Yeah, it's all
yeah.
good. I'm just trying to get you to think about it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I understand. I like totally understand why it needs to be called. You know, that when it volunteer search home because of the ID. Okay, yeah, that makes
There we go.
sense.
There we go. Nice. All right. So both of these work, and this works. Cool. Cool. Let's see. Oh, it's 7:01. Let's see if we got Parker. We have all the same people here for right now, so we'll go ahead and do one more thing because this one will be pretty quick. So it looks like if you look at our HTML, we have our navigation stays here. This is our static HTML. This is something that's going to be on every single page, right? And so we don't want to have any JavaScript in our HTML. So this render volunteer list and render home method being called on the volunteer button and the home button, we want to extract these out of our HTML and just put them in our JavaScript. So how do we do that? How do we add the render volunteer list method to this div? And how do we add the render home function to this div without doing it in HTML? We kind of just did it.
Wouldn't it be a good idea to just get rid of onClick equals render volunteer list, two parentheses, just get rid of it because it's already, oh, and then create a function.
Yep.
Create a function for render volunteer list to equal the class nav button. No.
Yeah. So you're right. We do want to remove these from the HTML. So you could just start with that. That's like a step one. remove these functions from the HTML. So whoever wants to pull these on-click attributes off of the elements, feel free to do that.
And also, whoever wants to also, I was just thinking, instead of naming it nav buttons for div class for the volunteer, maybe we can name those two, like line 13 and 14 differently. Would that be a good idea? I don't know.
These here.
Yeah. We have to name those like nav buttons 1, nav buttons 2. Or no.
Yeah, I mean, technically, we're gonna be doing styling to all this anyway, so we could call this like nav, and we could call this like nav list item.
Could we just create a container for this?
What's up?
Couldn't we just create a like container for both the line 13 and 14?
A container? Well, a div is a container.
Well,
in a sense. What do you mean by container?
yeah, I guess maybe I was trying to see if there's a quicker way to write. No, scratch that thought. Anyway, you're good.
Okay, cool. Let me just go and make sure. So we had nav button. Let me go make sure that it didn't mess up any of our styles. Yes, it did. So nav list item. Nav. Cool. So that should be good now. All right. And then, yeah, who wants to go ahead and pull these functions off of the elements? You could just delete them entirely. We'll go ahead and add them to the JavaScript. So line 13, line 14, just remove the render volunteer list function and the render home function.
Are we also gonna remove volunteer and home and like append those names into the JavaScript too?
No, because this is
okay.
yeah, the nav and the footer we'll just keep in our HTML for now. The only thing that's going to be rendered from JavaScript is our main, like our root.
Okay.
Yeah, for now.
So just strictly pulling off these functions.
Yes. Cool. That's much cleaner. So that looks good. I mean, our HTML is super concise, super simple. Main. I'm gonna go ahead and call this. We're actually only gonna have one main, so we actually don't need like main div as a class. Let me just make sure we don't have any styles on it. Main div.
Let's try and get away from using HTML at all, I guess.
Main. So there we go. We did have one right here, and it's way at the bottom. So let me go ahead and just. We have our body. Volunteer search home, volunteer search page. We could reorganize this CSS too. So main page, I'm gonna change this ID to root. Just so, because that's the word I'm gonna be using. So whenever we see get element by ID, we'll just use root. This will make it easier to transition to a framework too once we get there. Whenever y'all wanna go ahead and make that transition. Cool. So this is going to be the root of our JavaScript, I believe. That is it.
I have a really quick question.
Yes.
If you go to the .css file, there's a main. Where that's for the entire page, right? For the whole website.
That's for our main element. So anything inside of here.
Oh, okay. For some reason, I thought there was supposed to be like, I thought you were going to create like a .root. You can also do it that way, right?
Yeah, I mean, with the ID, we're going to be doing get element by ID root. You'll see when we get to, let me see, volunteer card div. Yeah, so you can see here, I'm just targeting with root is just going to be I don't know. I just feel more comfortable with it. It just makes more sense because we're injecting all of our JavaScript into here. So when y'all do make the transition from vanilla JS to React, you're gonna have way less questions. You're gonna be like, oh, okay, like this totally makes sense. Liz, you know.
I do know.
Yeah.
I also know this is important too. I do have to, on the CSS file though, if you look at line 87, there's another main for some reason. I don't know if that's
87 main.
what that's doing.
Flex grow. Okay, that's actually a major problem that we were having too. So yeah, let me show you. Let's go ahead, delete that. Yeah, we could go ahead and just spend a day on this CSS file, one day too. So if we refresh and then we go to volunteer, so you see how this footer is like stuck here. Yeah, it's supposed to push all the way to the bottom. And so let me see if I could just change that really quickly. So we have our body should have flex on it, and then our main should grow. Display flex, flex direction, column. So our body has that, and our main should be the one that's growing. So main, flex grow, 1. There's got to be something else here that's messing with that, because for some reason this is not fixing to the bot. It's not. Yeah, there's got to be something else somewhere in this CSS. There's something. Volunteers.
Do you want to create a .cs? Do you want to create a like an empty block into the footer? I suppose.
An empty
Well,
block.
I mean, like, why would you even need a footer? I mean, I don't.
We'll add one eventually, so it's nice to have and just to learn.
Okay.
Learn Flexbox, but yeah, I'm not gonna play around too much with it. It's definitely the CSS though. There's something in the CSS where probably something flex in one of these styles. We'll find it though. Don't worry. We're gonna have to find it because we're not just gonna keep the footer right there. But I see what you're saying. Like, what do we need a footer for?
Yeah, I know. Like most websites don't really, especially if this is yeah, I don't think they use that stuff anymore. I don't know.
Yeah,
I guess
it
you want to
depends.
like
It depends
write
on
your
the site.
company name, and, like contact us home, and like all this other stuff. I guess that would make sense.
Yeah, I
But
think
we're not doing
I
that.
think the nonprofit websites that we found all had footers, and so naturally we just added it. But you're right. Like, I like that you're even asking the question, like, do we need it? And if we don't, why do we have it? Like, that's important to be asking those questions, because a lot of the times you just do it because everyone else is doing it, but you actually don't need it, you know?
Yeah, and for example, so when people are using screen readers, it's reading the HTML file and it's reading the alt text and the picture. So if you don't like fill out the alt text of like describing the picture, the person using the screen reader has no idea what the picture is. If there's no footer, then they have no idea what's in the information. So like yeah, it's just like one reason. There's many reasons why to include a footer and whatever.
Yeah. It's not too important right now, so we could even, like, honestly, we could go ahead and just take it out. Still good, I think.
Something about a gray background that probably shouldn't. Is that why that's happening?
I know. I think it has to do with the height here. Man, height. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, the height was set to.
So much better.
Yeah, the height was set to 50. Yeah, so that was actually what was the problem with the footer too, I think. Let's go ahead and try this out. Let's save that. Width 100. I don't even think you have to set that, honestly. Yeah, so we got our footer. And then, cool. I think we have a different footer div. And footer div. Let's move that stuff to the bottom, just since it's at the bottom no matter what. And then we have like all this extra stuff in the footer. This like there's nothing even in the footer, so it doesn't make sense. Let's go ahead and just add like some text so we can see it. We could use a foot. We don't even need the class because you could just target it with the footer word. All right, cool. So we got our footer. We got our footer. It's at the bottom the way that it should be. And then, yeah, that's fine. Still super small on that one, but all good. We can go ahead and, all right, so there's one more thing I wanted to do before we're done here. Actually, it's still the same people, right? Oh, we got Angel popped in. What's up, Angel? Feel free to unmute and say what's up. You're muted right now, though. All right, so we just pulled the... Oh, this looks so much better. It just looks like nice and clean. All right, so we just pulled the functions off of this div. I just want to remove this B because this is just making it bold, and we could add that bold style. So this is like styling added to the HTML. All right, there we go. That's way better. All right, so we want to add a function to the volunteer div and to the home div so that when you click on the home div, you render the home page, and when you click on the volunteer div, you render the volunteer list. Hey.
I was having the worst technical difficulties. I was just really struggling now. Sorry. Hi, everyone.
Hey, hey. Yeah, we're just cleaning
What's
up
up?
the
What are you guys
project.
working on?
Just cleaning up the project a little bit. Yeah, we got the HTML down to this here, just super simple. I don't know if you were here the previous days, but we have a function to render the home. We have a function to render the volunteer list page, and then this is part of that function, and then we're just starting to build a function to render the volunteer details. So we're basically creating functions to render each one of these eventually, sooner than later, because we have, like, right now we're at 166 lines of code in this JavaScript file, and so it's starting already to become unmanageable. Like, but soon we're going to get to 250 lines of code, and then 300, and like already tonight I had people saying like, what is this? What does this say? Or like, hey, if you look right here, I'm like, where? I'm like going up and down and I have no clue where you are. So it's already starting to get a little frustrating, but it's going to get even more frustrating. So then we'll break it out into, then we'll keep this main.js as the controller. And then we'll have a model file and we'll have different view files. So like this volunteer details will be a view. It'll be a class of its own. This will be a class. This will be a class. We'll break them out into classes. And this file right here will be like way cleaner, way easier. Just remember this when we transition to that.
You got it. Okay.
So hey,
Yes.
sorry. So volunteer render home, those have been edited out of the HTML. But so my question goes back to, since it's been edited out of the HTML, we don't have to worry about adding it anymore because it's already on the .js file.
Yeah, so if I click on, we want it to happen when we click on these though, right?
Well, isn't it happening? Obviously it's not.
Yeah, I'm clicking on them right now. Nothing's happening.
Yeah, because
So
we
there's-
haven't created some sort of link from the HTML document to the JavaScript document.
Exactly. So what do we have to do?
We have to create that link
How?
by coding. What do you mean how? I don't know. That's why you're here.
So we have a link. You've done it. You
did
literally
it.
just did it like 20 minutes ago.
But what is it called? What is it called? There's so many names.
Can you give her a hint?
So we do have the link here. You can see that our JavaScript is imported. That's what I think of when you say link. But what you need to do, the vocabulary you want to use is we need to add functionality to these elements. And how do we add functionality to these elements? One, we have to create a reference to them, one by one at a time. And then we have to add an event listener to each one of them.
Yeah, we just took it away, the on click. Now we need to re-add it, but in a different way.
Yep.
No.
And
We're gonna
so
run into conflict because we have. Do we have to do it within the render home function? That maybe should be my first question.
that's a really, really good question. So let's look at our HTML. So this navigation element is going to be, is this dependent on which function is run, or is this always going to be here no matter what?
The goal is to have it always be there no matter what.
Yes, exactly. So if I click this volunteer card, my navigation is still here. It's always going to be there. So we don't have to place it inside of a function. So we could just create it anywhere here. You could create it just underneath the window that add event listener. If someone wants to give that a shot. Does someone want to do the home button and then someone else do the volunteer button?
I'll do the home button.
All right, cool.
Wait, so what are we doing? Adding an event listener to the button?
Yes.
Okay, I'll do the volunteer one then.
Cool.
Is it really similar to the volunteer button that was made earlier?
So I'm going to add some IDs just because when I add JavaScript to elements, I like to do it through IDs. That's just preference. You don't have to. You could do it through the class with a query selector. But I like ID. So let's just say nav list item. I'm just trying to be clear.
Don't you want it? Oh. Swap 13 and 14.
Let's just do nav home and nav volunteer. That's just easier. Yes. So we want to target 13, add an event listener there with a specific function to render the volunteer list page, and then a reference to the home button where we add an event listener to render the home when you click that. Feel free. I'm just going to go to the CSS and tidy a couple things up. Let me know when you're done.
Did I do that right? In main JS?
Yes, so we have our home button. Yes, perfect. Nav home. Yes, exactly. There we go. Cool. And then, just to make it a little bit better, all right, that's way clear. Now I know that you could click on that. Cool.
Does it work?
Do the buttons work? You're done?
I think so.
All right, so we have our home button here, and then I like this too. That's
a nice one-liner.
yeah, nice one-liner there. All right, so we have our document dot get element by ID nav volunteer. You look here, we have our nav volunteer, add event listener, render volunteer list, and then Parker did this one, right? Nav home.
Yeah.
We have our nav home ID, and we're gonna render home. All right, cool. Let's try it out. Perfect. Nice. So it works. And I just changed this up a little bit, just so you could see that you could click it. All right, cool. All right, and our footer is moving, is adjusting with the screen. Let's check out our volunteer. For some reason it's shrinking there, but that's not a big deal. This is shrinking too. So we'll figure that out after. All right, cool. Good job, guys and gals. Let's see. All right, we still have the same team. So now, when we click on one of these cards, we want to render. I guess that's like the next step, right? We want to render our volunteer details page. So does anyone have any thoughts on that?
Wait, can you say it again?
So now we're on our volunteer page and we have 3 cards, but when you click on one of these cards, you want to render our volunteer details page. So how do we do that?
Would we want to write a if else statement if someone clicks on this card or on a card, render whatever information or
Say that again.
I was just saying if could we do like an if else statement of like if someone clicks on this card, it renders information. If someone does that, then or else it would just not go in. I mean, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. So
I don't know how to explain it. That's where
that's okay.
this
is where this is where it's gonna start getting even more fun. So this is where it actually gets a little more complicated. So when we click on this card here, we want the USDA volunteer details page to show up. And so it's like,
so like my question and
go ahead.
like so then, like a question you have to ask yourself is like, okay, if you click on this card, but you have to know like what that card is before they click on it, right? So so the computer has to call out like a get a event listener to the specific card with a specific information to then specify what to show, right? It has to be that specific.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. So when we exactly. Because how do we know that when you click this card that we navigate to these details? Like, what if I click on this card and then I go to the California one? You don't want that. So you need a way to reference this. So the only way that we have to reference this is with the array that we have up at the top. From line 3 to line 20, we have this array. And so we need to start looking at the Figma where, let me pull this up.
Oh, this is the part where it gets fun. I see what you're saying now. I can imagine this, sort of.
Yeah, so now it's not just the name, the location, and the description that's important. It's actually the cause areas and when and where and the skills required. And so, like, how are we going to build this stuff up? And are we going to build all this stuff up? Because there is an API that we're... Let me go ahead and pull up the API so everyone can see, like, what information we're going to be pulling in.
I heard that API makes the coding experience a bit better or easier.
Yeah, so... Yes. So I'm going to go ahead and just pull this up, and I'm going to share it with you guys. There's a rate control on it anyways. I believe I... hold on. I have Postman. And we'll just make a quick API call so we can see the data that we're going to get. All right. So let's go ahead and make an API call. I think it's this right here. Though I have to, hold on, I have to set something too. Give me 1 second. I just need to check my email. They sent it to me here. Because the information that we're actually going to post is dependent on this here. All right, here we go. So if I go to not Charity Navigator, Charity API. Charity API. So these are, let me check out the docs. All right. So we can go ahead and let me just find a good one. So we could search a charity by its tax ID. We could search it by its schema, tax ID, term. All right, so let's use a term. That seems the simplest. I wish you could just get all though. So if I do like food, and then I need to set a header of API key, and then the value is my actual key. So you're getting a little sneak peek at the back end, so I hope you don't mind. All right, so I'm going to make a request to this API right here. It's going to check to make sure that I attached a header of API key. And a header is basically just an object. So a header is like an object, kind of like this right here. And the property name is API key. And the value here needs to match the value. And as long as I send them a valid value, then they'll send me back some data. All right, I don't want to visualize it like this. I want to see it raw. JSON. Raw. No. API key. Let me just make sure that's the thing that they need. API key, HTTP header, live, and it might just be the search term. So what kind of terms can we use? Term, search term, URL encoded, which is not including any special characters, so it should work. Let's see. And then it should return some data. Search the 2 million public charities by term. This endpoint requires at least 3 characters to return results. I had 4 characters and will return the top results ordered by relevance and charity size. This searches the nonprofit name and sort names fields. Organizations whose charitable status has lapsed will not appear in search results. You may optionally filter results further by providing city and state parameters, which is what we're going to do. So search term, URL encoded, and yeah, that should work.
Do you have the get before your HTTP? Just delete that.
Oh yeah.
It's already a get request.
There we go. Cool, cool. All right, so this is the data that we get back. So you can see the data here. This is, let me move this up. This is one nonprofit organization. So you can see that we get its name. Its city. Yeah, we're gonna have to find out what these classifications are. We might need maps so we could actually, its activity. Yeah, so a lot of these are like flags that represent income amount, the amount of money they make. Revenue, state. Yeah, so this doesn't give any real description. Let's see. There should be an EIN though, right? So if we take this EIN and let's do a search by EIN. So we'll take that EIN. Let's see if we can get some more detailed information here. And all right. All right. So the information we get is just like super limited. Is there even a website? No.
Is there a way to find out? So if we go to a charitable website and find out like where they get their API, you know? Is there a way to or no?
Yeah, we checked out a ton of different nonprofit APIs and they all cost money. So they give you maybe like a free, they give you some requests for free and then they start charging. So this was the one that was free. There's got to be an option out of this whole API where we can get some good information though. returns an object.
I hope it's okay that I'm making changes to the CSS. If you get any crazy errors.
No, you're good. You're good. Data imports. I think this one may be the best one. Classification and subsection codes are the name of the organization, classification. The special schema endpoint returns a minimal data dictionary or field explanation for the organization attributes. This, okay, so this just shows you like the information that is returned. Name. Yeah, because I want something, I mean, this is gonna get us, I guess this will get us enough where we have enough information to like click one of these and go to a page with a little bit more information that just shows like their revenue and that sort of thing. But that's not really like, it's not what I thought it would be. I wanted like a nonprofit description and opportunities and like just way more information about them. So I'll continue looking for a better API, but we can start thinking about this. Like, let's say we just use for now the term. And we come over here and we just do term, like homeless. And we make this. We're going to get, so we got Coalition for the Homeless, Concerned Citizens, Verde Valley Homeless Coalition. So we're going to get a list. We're going to get a location, which is what we wanted, right? Location. We're not going to get a description. At least nothing. The thing is, there is a way to get a description. Like if I went to ChatGPT and I said, so there are ways around it. Like if it actually knows what these are, like it'll do the research. We could, we're not going to do this because it's just way outside of the scope of front end development, but just to get everyone thinking, you could see how this is like, oh, it operates as the lead agency in this. So it's pretty accurate. So we could do something where our thing, when you click on this one right here, it uses the ID to load the page. And it just loads the page, like it loads like the name and the location. And then you would use GPT, like the GPT API to send the information, like the name and location. So you can say, hey, this is the name and location of a nonprofit. Give us a description about this nonprofit. And then GPT will actually stream the description. So there are ways to make this like a modern, cool application with our limitations. I'm just trying to like think creatively and how do we overcome these and make something even cooler than we thought it was going to be without having to pay like $100 a month or something crazy. So there are ways around it, but for now, just to get down the functionality that we were actually thinking about, I think eventually something like that, where it does just return like a 1-paragraph description and you navigate to the page and then it starts streaming it out the same way that ChatGPT does, because you could build something like that. It's just more engaging. It looks cool. And it's not too demanding. If you did that for every single card that showed up on this page, then that would be too much, because you get like the name, the location, and then you get like all these descriptions printing out. But as long as you did it just when you clicked, that's totally fine. So I say that for now, we go ahead and when you click, we just add some of this other information that you get. So like maybe like asset amounts, or we could even find out what the classifications mean. Income amount, just like some basic dry information. just so we could, yeah, just to get the functionality we were planning on getting, where we could, and just like a more detailed address, and that sort of thing. So we actually won't be loading up all this stuff, though we could if we want to.
Do you want to go over the Figma stuff, like the steps for like what to do next and stuff? Or
Yeah, so basically, just looking at the project is, I say we create so we have our volunteer list. We need to create a schema for this list. So it's not going to be like just Florida for location anymore. It's going to be something like address, city, state, just so we can have a little bit more information here.
I mean, I don't mind creating like, you know, all this fictitious information on my own. And
No, it's not gonna be fictitious. I'm just showing you a schema. We're actually gonna pull from the API.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. Because for us to, so basically what I want to do, and one thing that we're gonna be adding, which I'm just gonna say ID. So that's what we need. We're gonna need an ID. So when we render this list here, render volunteer list, we're gonna be adding an event listener onto each one of these here. So like when you click this card, when you click that card, the way we have it right now though is when you click on, actually for some reason it's saying show search results. Search button. Oh yeah, that's right. So when you click the search button, show search results. But then we want to add an event listener to this HTML here. Then we want to add an event listener that calls show or render volunteer details page. And so what we're going to pass into here is an ID, because the details page that we render is going to be based on the ID of these items here. So if the ID, let's just say, for example, I'm just going to give you this information before we sign off because we got a few more minutes and I want everyone to think about it. So let's just say we go to render a volunteer list page. You know, we come to our nonprofit navigator, let's refresh, click on volunteer, and it renders our volunteer list page. We're going to have our list of cards. Now, when we render these cards, we want each one of them to have an ID. So we want like this div. We could do like data ID. And the ID that we pass into it is volunteer .id. That way, later, and I'm just kind of like freeballing right now, I haven't really thought it through, but yeah, we're just basically adding an ID. Then that way, when we call the function with rendered volunteer details and we pass the ID in there, the ID that we're going to be passing in there is a data ID from, or just an ID from the element that we clicked. Basically, that's the idea of it, because we need a way to target a card individually. So when I click this card, I want the USDA page, details page to load. When I click the NSF, I want the NSF details page to load. I don't know what you're doing to the styles, Angel, but
And
I know. I'm trying to figure it out. Can you reload it real quick?
yeah. Yeah, that's
Oh
reload.
my gosh, what did I do? All right, let me fix it.
hey, Jim, I was thinking about something. Did you want to start looking at how when someone searches for, I guess it would be after, right? After we have all that figured out, because then we can go and find a way so that when someone is searching a certain alphabet or location, then that would show that, then it would show up, right?
A certain alphabet or location.
Well, I'm so sorry, like a certain name. Like you mentioned that, like when you go to the search button for the keyword, it would show, like NSF would show up, but like say it's not on the list. Like then there's gonna be a sorry, nothing exists page, right?
Yeah, so if it's not on the list, then the card won't even show up, so we won't be able to click it.
But something has to be on the page. Something has to show up saying, sorry, there's no results or something, right?
Like, are you saying if we just like type in a word here, like
Like LOC.
a topic, and then we do search, and there's just nothing available, then yeah, we'll render a sign that says no organizations meet your search, something, something like that.
Am I making these variables correctly? You reload it real quick.
It looks like there's an error, but yeah, nah. What are you doing here with these color variables?
I was just trying to normalize all the colors that we're using. That's how it started.
And then there we go.
Okay, that worked. So my mistake was some other stuff. Okay, that works. Thanks.
Yeah. Let me go ahead
We
and
still haven't, sorry, I think Aditya, me and him and Tiffany were working on the homepage. It looked like it looked a bit different than what we see now, what we see. Yeah, it looked a bit different. He has it saved on his computer, but I was just gonna like sort of like finish where we started, I suppose, the homepage.
yeah, let me go ahead and make a quick change. Volunteer search page, and then volunteer search results, volunteer card. Let me just do volunteer card, margin. Can we just do 10?
Do 20. There's another 20 in this thing somewhere.
I want to do 20 on the bottom, 10 on the top. Let me see. Yeah, there we go. I just want to kind of like space it. We're going to change this. I just want to like just space it out a little bit. I guess 20 would work too. Either way, right? 20 on the top and bottom. Yeah, that's fine. That's cool for now. Yeah. Looks good so far. All right, what I'm going to do is, this is working. It's good. We've been working on it for a couple days. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a pull request. And then, all right, cool. Yeah, it's all working. So think about what we talked about. We're going to go ahead and, this is actually more, I would say it's not like, it's definitely not introductory. I would say it's more in the intermediate range. So that's cool. That's cool for everybody here, I think. All right. So I'm on Aditya Styles. I'm gonna Are you still editing code? Because I'm going to do a commit and push. I don't want to do it while you're in the middle of this stuff. Angel?
Oh, did you hear me? Oh, if you're cool with how it is now, then I'm good.
Yeah, we'll just push it, and since we did.
All right. Just does the home look weird or anything?
Nah, it's
Is
good.
anything-
The functionality's working. It's good. We'll go ahead and continue where we left off tomorrow. So I'm just going to add it to staging. Extract HTML for dynamic JS and add style. Good. Cool. So let me go to GitHub. DTS styles. We're gonna push that into volunteer search. And cool. Checking ability to merge. Go ahead and merge. Cool. And now delete branch. I don't think anyone else is actually working on any branches right now, but we do have a few other branches. So let me see. Nobody here is volunteer list HTML. I believe we finished that one. 2 commits ahead of main. Yeah, I think that was one. Volunteer search 22. Volunteer list HTML. All right, cool.
Yeah,
So,
all that's done.
yeah, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these 3 right here. Cool. And then, all right, cool. So we got our volunteer search. 2 branches left. And yeah, we'll continue working on this feature tomorrow. That sounds good. Does anyone have any questions before we sign off? We'll actually be doing the data structure algorithm solution sharing session in just 5 minutes.
No questions here, but thank you.
I think
Nope.
today's session was like I understand a lot more of the stuff, or at least attempted to today compared to like yesterday.
Yeah. I want to really try to like live within the constraints of the event. So like next week when I switch to do an introduction to JavaScript at 5, it's not just going to be introduction to JavaScript. It's going to be like introduction to web development, basic HTML, basic CSS, basic JavaScript. So it'll give us an opportunity to actually like clean up the naming conventions, HTML, CSS, all that stuff. Then intermediate JavaScript, we will be focused on this sort of thing. Pretty much like this sort of thing where we're rendering a certain page based on the ID will be the most complicated part of intermediate. But we'll actually be focused entirely on JavaScript for intermediate, no HTML and CSS. Even if some HTML or CSS stuff comes up, we'll save it for tomorrow at 5 when it's introductory. And then the advanced will start moving into like architecture type stuff. And I want to start incorporating, I want to start incorporating when we have a chance. I don't know if there's any room for it in this feature, which is okay. But if you look at the web APIs, I'm kind of just starting to go through these one by one, and I'm adding them to either intermediate, introductory, intermediate, or advanced. So like the DOM, that's introductory. Like you need to start learning about the DOM ASAP. You also need to start learning about like just events ASAP. There's the console API, just console.log, that sort of thing. You need to start learning about ASAP. But then there's most of these here, they're just advanced. Like it's advanced functionality. So like most of these here are all advanced functionality, but they're really good to know. Because regardless of what framework you go to, if you know about the broadcast channel API, where you could allow like 2 different contexts to communicate with each other and send messages to each other. It's not for every app, but there's going to be apps that something like this is useful for, or like the barcode detection API. Like you could start building some pretty amazing stuff. You don't have to master all these. You just have to know they exist, you know? And if you know they exist, you could always think back like, huh, yeah, cookie store, that's just like a storage method, you know? So I want to start diving. In the advanced, I want to start really putting we might even add features that we don't need to certain applications just so we could like practice with this stuff. Like build a feature, make sure it works, and then just like cut it out and encapsulate that functionality so it exists. Like if anyone wants to use that functionality for one of their future websites, that's totally fine, you know. But yeah, this is so crucial to understand. So in the advanced, we're going to be focused mostly on like organization. So this code that we have here isn't so like cluttered and all in one file, and then really focused on the available web APIs, because this is functionality that already exists. Geolocation, so many apps use that, you know. So this is literally built into almost every single browser, and a lot of people I know who went to boot camps, they get out of boot camps and they don't even know what these web APIs are, which is like so crazy to me. Like,
Yeah, this is like a gold mine. This is pretty dope.
you know what I'm saying? Imagine if you got a brand new car, like 2023 brand new Tesla, and you were driving around for a year, and then a year later you like popped open the dashboard and there was like 1,000 controls underneath, and you were like, oh my goodness, I've been driving this around for a year and I didn't even know all 99% of the functionality was hidden. What the heck? I should have popped this open. Like that's what it is. It's just like functionality that nobody knows about, that you could start pressing buttons and pulling levers and doing cool other things.
Yeah,
you know?
you like coding genius stuff. That's cool.
It's everything. It's all the built-in functionality. So if you understand those web APIs and you understand JavaScript, like you could use any language. It doesn't even matter. React, Angular, Vue, any of them. All right, cool.
All right, good night.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll see y'all tomorrow.
Thank you. Good night.
Night.
Good night.
Night. I'll be right back.
Back again.
Hey.
Yo.
It looks like it's just me and you.
Well then, I am gonna tell you that I did not attempt this.
Yeah, me neither. I didn't have any time to do any of this today, but we could work through the easy one if you want. We could take a look at it.
I don't even know what an n-ary tree is, but hey.
Let me pull up. I think the best way to do this would probably be draw.io. Let me open up my code editor though and just, yeah, we could work through this. Give it a shot. Oh man, it's been so long since we actually like worked through one of these problems together, huh?
Yeah, we never get to the hard ones either.
I know.
I mean, not that I would be doing the hard ones necessarily, but
I know. I'm not doing the hard ones either. Though I've done a few of them, but they took me a long time to do, you know.
yeah.
There was one that I was working on for like 2 weeks and I was like, I'm going all in on this thing, and it took me like a week to solve it, and then I was like, it was, when I finally came up with a solution, it was like 150 lines of JavaScript, and I was like, all right, how can I simplify this and make this easier? And so I actually built a test suite for it. So I tested each one of the functions one by one. I started like breaking them into smaller things. Hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey. And I converted it to TypeScript, and I seriously spent over 2 weeks on this thing. Like, it was probably a little over 2 weeks. And it was solid though. It was solid. Like, after it was done, I understood it a little bit better, but it wasn't easy at first. Like, the first couple of days, I didn't even understand it. Honestly, I built a solution for it, and I was just changing it in so many different ways where I didn't understand it, and then I had to just scratch it all, and I was like, let me just really think about this, and I decided to just plan for a day. And I planned, and I was like, okay, I really thought it through. I came up with a solution. It was almost like a mathematical proof to it too, where I was like, all right, so we have 3 cases, 3 different possible things that could happen. It's either going to be this, this, or this, based on, like, it was just very complicated. But yeah, maybe one day. I was thinking about it today, like breaking down bigger problems into sub-problems.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, so this problem is, given the root of an n-ary tree, return the pre-order traversal of its nodes values. N-ary tree input serialization is represented in their level order traversal. Each group of children is separated by the null value. All right, so eventually we're
you
gonna...
just might want to share your screen.
Oh, yeah. Now I want you guys to just imagine what I'm looking at tonight. Extra challenge. Just playing. Alright. So, I guess if you really think this through, let me get this code, post it here, 1.js, and actually, I guess they're passing in a route that's not really... I'd have to build the test cases. So, if you look at 1, 3, so a pre-order is going to take the value, so let me just see. All right, so it's going to give us a binary tree. It's going to give us this representation right here, and what we have to return is an array of numbers. So let me open up like a draw.io so we can really think this through. All right, so we'll create a new diagram, blank diagram. Data structures, easy, right? All right, so let's create one. Three. Two. Four. And then five and six. All right, so this is our tree. Does anyone have any ideas about this so far? I have an idea for it. I just want to see what y'all think.
Not really. What does, so it's asking return the pre-order traversal of its node's values. What does that statement even mean?
I'll go over that in just 1 second.
Okay.
So it looks like it's possible that this node can have 4 different nodes. I've never done this before, actually. All right. So a pre-order traversal just means that, so there's a couple different ways that you could traverse a tree. One of them is in order traversal, one of it is pre-order, and one of them is post-order. This is a pre-order. So normally a pre-order is going to do this. The way that it's going to be is we're going to process current node, then we're going to move to the left, and then we're going to move to the right. And so my question is, so this dot children, I wonder what this dot children is. It's going to be listed as an object, an array. I don't know. It doesn't make it clear here. But yeah, so typically, and this is just going off of my experience with binary search trees, if we're doing a pre-order traversal, this is the root node here, 1, we process this node. So if we have an array, I'll show you how we would do it. How do I make this bigger? I don't know. It's okay. So if we're traversing this tree, we'd start with the root node. We'd process that root node, add that value, 1, and then we move to the left. So we'd move to the left. We'd process this node. We'd add this node. Then we'd move to the left. We process that 5 node, that value, push it onto our array, go to the left. The left is null, so we'd return. Go to the right is null, so we'd return. Then there's nowhere else to go, so we go back to the 3. Then we go to the right, we process the 6, add that. Go to the left, it's null, return, go to the right, it's null, return, go back up to 3. We already went to the right, so we just go back up to 1. Now this is where I'm like, all right, so how exactly do we process the n-ary tree? Because with a binary, you would just write code like this. You would just do, we'd create our array. So let's just say our output equals array. and then we do something recursive. So we would do, I think I have an idea. We would do let value equals root dot value, because we want to pull this val. It's actually val. So root dot val. And we could even do something like output dot push root dot val. So we're just pushing our output. We're pushing the value of our current node onto our array. And then we just call our pre-order again with root dot left, and then we call pre-order again with root dot right. So with this, we don't have a left and we don't have a right. We could have like 5 nodes. We could have 6 nodes. We could have 10 nodes. Instead of just having 2 children like a binary search tree, we might just have 1. We might have 0. We might have 10. You don't really know. So looking at this problem. In the first example, we have a root node. The root node has 3 children. And then the first child has 2. The second child has 0. And the third child has 0. But there's actually 3 nodes here. So we can't just do left and right the way that you would with a binary search tree, where you just move left, move right. And then with this one, we actually have 4. So I think I have an idea. It's just not a recursive method. It's going to be an iterative method. Because I believe if this dot children, I believe it's an object. Definition for a node, function node, passing in the children. It's not clear. Let me see if the number of nodes in the tree is in the range of 0 to 10,000. Node dot value is 0 to 10,000. The height of the n-ary tree is less than or equal to 1,000. Recursive solution is trivial. Could you do it iteratively? So. Does anyone have any thoughts on it?
Just vibes.
I think we went over some binary search tree stuff. Liz, were you there for that stuff?
Maybe? Was it like in the very beginning?
I think so. If it was, that's when it would be. So with this one, I think we definitely need an output array, right? So let's go ahead and create our output array. And then we're gonna wanna return our output array.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that, right?
Yeah. So something I found in the Google search it says in a pre-order traversal of an n-ary tree, the root node is visited, and after that the subtrees are traversed recursively from left to right. But we don't want to use recursion, right?
Yeah, I believe we want to use iterative. The problem is saying.
So I think that's like the only definition that, like, what you were doing seems right based on this. You just visit the root node first. It says, as the root node is traversed before or pre any subtree, it is called pre-order traversal. So whatever you sounded like you would, when you were showing us like how you would.
Node, and then you have the several different recruit versions of the different things. I know you have to do definitions of the iterations, but they're in separate functions. Just don't remember the details.
My big question is, what is this children object? Is it an array? Is it an object?
I believe it's an array.
What makes you think that?
Because the root starts at 1 and the array element has under the recursion. And then when you finish that, the next function will go under the next recursion.
What do you mean?
I can't quite remember.
Yeah, because it looks like we have a null value here. So what I think is, let's assume this is an array. Then we might have to use the stack. So if I did for let child of root.children, this should iterate over the children, right? So let's just say we pass our root in. We have our root, so we have our root node. And then we want to iterate over our children, right?
Yeah.
And each one of our children is an object. So the child, each one of these is going to be a node. So each child here is going to be a node. So we should be able to iterate over this. Now, the thing is, we want to add the value of root to our output. And so I'm thinking we're going to need a stack. So let me go ahead and just say stack equals root. So the first thing we're probably going to have to do is, let me just see what order this would be in. So if we did, this is our stack, we have our root, and I say let current equals stack.pop. So that'll give us our root. Actually, while stack.length is greater than 0, we want to pop off whatever is on our stack. So in this case, let's just do some examples down here and walk through it step by step. So we're starting with a stack that has the root in it, right? We're creating a stack with the root. While there's something in this stack, then we're gonna run this function. We're just gonna keep iterating over the stack. We're gonna keep popping it off. So once we have this, we'll take our root. We have our root, and our root has children, right? So we're gonna say current.children. So we're gonna take all the children from our current, which is our root to begin with, and we're gonna say stack.push child. And so now what we would do is we'd push 3 objects. This one, and this one. So we push the one with 3, the one with 2, the one with 4. So the thing is, though, we actually want to pull the 3 next. We don't want to pull the 4. So instead of doing pop, we'll do shift. So that will pull from the front instead. So that the next one we pull is this one. It'll be less efficient, but that's okay. So we'll push for each child that exists on our current, which is root. We'll go ahead and push that on. And then we'll also do let current equals that. And then we'll do output dot push current dot val. And that should push the value. So when we first had the root on here, we shifted the root off. We pushed the root's value, which is 1, onto our output array. And then for each child that existed on root, which is initially 3, we pushed it onto our stack. So now we're done with root. And then we exit this for loop. Then we start this while loop again. Is stack dot length greater than 0? Yes. So we shift our next one off. This is going to be this one, this node. And then for each child of this node, we are going to push those onto the stack. So 5 and 6, 6. And then we've done that. Oh, we actually pushed the value on too. And then, yeah, see, so this is, so we want to shift, unshift. So instead of adding, let me think. So we push the 5, and then we push this. So that would actually be incorrect too. Yeah, so the challenge here is going to be getting the order correct, right? What do you guys think?
Let's see. There should be 3 layers, right?
You're saying there should be a height of 3?
Yeah.
Yes.
Alright, and you have the root that starts over there with the output, and then you use the well stack to determine the height. Or is it the what is the length exactly?
The length
from
of
the stack?
that's just however many nodes are left to be processed, and then after all the nodes have been processed, then we've went over the whole tree. Yeah.
So you don't need the multiple stacks to make the 3 different layers. So you would
Nah, just one.
rename current with the stack shift, and then push the output, and have a for loop for each of the children.
Let me think about
And what
this.
does unshift do?
Unshift would just push it, instead of like pushing it onto the end, it pushes it onto the front.
Okay.
Let me test something out really quickly because I want to see. Let's comment this out. And let's console.log boot.children, just so I could see what this is. Standard out. So, all right, so it's an array. It's an array with an object. All right, so we could, all right, that makes it a little easier.
You use shift, it's not gonna be costly. You should have used back and pop. I mean, you can push out a tile onto the stack itself, and then you can pop it off.
Yes, yes, but it has to be a pre-order traversal. So we have to print 1, 3, 5, 6, 2, 4. So we will pop. And I think if we just do, so we push our current, and then instead of doing let child of current, hold on. So I want to push 4, 2, 3. And then I want to put, all right, cool. So I think we could just start from the end of the array. So if we did something like for let I equals current dot children dot length minus 1, while I is greater than or equal to 0. I minus minus. Hold on. What's up? I'm in a meeting. Sorry about that. My sister just shows up with a kitten. I told her I'll be done in a few. All right, cool. So for let I equals current dot children dot length minus 1. Yeah, so if we start from the last in the array, push that on. And yeah, that should work. So stack dot push current dot children I. Boom. And so the way that would work is, let me just go ahead and pull this over to the code editor so that we can see it in a better environment here. So basically we start with our output. Output equals empty array. We have our stack equals an array with a root. And then we have, we're gonna iterate until this stack is empty. So this stack is not empty, it has our root. And so what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop off our root. We're gonna make it our current equals, we'll just say 1. For now, it's a node with a 1 in it. We're going to do output.push. We'll push that value onto our output. And then, so our current dot children equals an array with objects. First one is 3, next one is 2, next one is 4. And so if we iterate from the back, which would be current.children.length, which is 3 minus 1, so I starts as 2, second element. And we move from the back to the front. Then we push current.children.I, current.children.2 onto the stack. Then we'll push this one. And then we'll push this one. And then, so we don't have to think about this anymore. We just iterate it over this. Then we check our stack.length again. We still have stuff here. We still have nodes in our stack. And so we pop it off again. We pop off the 3. And then we have boom. And so now we do the same thing. We take the value, we push that onto our stack, and then we do the same thing with this. So our current.children equals an array with 2 objects, right? This time we have an object of 5 and an object of 6. And same thing, we're iterating from the back. So boom, pushing this onto our stack. Then we're taking this 5, we're pushing this onto our stack. And we don't have to think about this anymore. And then we're done with this here. We check our stack length again. We still have some. Looks like our next node is going to be this 5 here. And so we push our current value onto here. And it looks like we're going to process this. There are no children. We're going to process this. We're going to push this 6 onto here. There are no children. We're going to take this 2, process this. There are no children. Push that 2. And then we have our 4. There are no children. So when I say there are no children, that just means we're not pushing anything new onto the stack. And then we should end up with this output array right here. And yeah. That should work. And that's an iterative solution. This should work so long as the children, this property right here is an array, which it looks like it is an array. It looks like, yeah. So it looks like it's an array of objects. It's an array of nodes. So yeah, let's try it out. Does anyone have any feedback? Do you think it's going to be right? Do you think it's going to be wrong? Is there anything you want me to add?
Yeah.
All right, let's give it a shot. Accepted. And moment of truth. Runtime error. Cannot read properties of null. Reading val. So output dot push current dot val. Where would this happen? Line 19. So current dot val. So we may have pushed a null value onto this array somewhere. Let's see, onto our stack somewhere. That's the only thing I could think of. Stack.push current.children I. So current.children does exist on every single one. Let's see. I'm just gonna do like if it's truthy, then push it. Otherwise, just skip. So I think so. That's one way. But the thing is, we're doing while I is greater than or equal to 0. Yeah, so if it was 0, if the length was 0 minus 1, it would be -1. So that shouldn't run. So there really shouldn't be. I don't see where that's happening there. That's strange to me. Current.val. Yeah. Anyone have any thoughts on it?
correct that null issue.
Yeah, so cannot read properties of null reading value. So that is on line 19, output dot push current dot val. Let me, because that'll, let's see what we got here. It is accepted, there's just a couple cases that standard out null. Yeah. So the thing is, if we're trying to pop something off of the stack and there's nothing on it, then this, let me see. Stack down length. I'm pretty sure that's not gonna work. I don't know, let me know if you see anything though. Yeah, it's just for certain test cases here. Yeah, because stack.length, if it's 0, this isn't gonna run. Alright, so starting with root. Let me see. Last executed input. Oh, this is for if an empty array is passed into it, right? So what do we do if an empty array is passed into it? The number of nodes is 0 to, oh, okay. So this is a case, this is just an edge case. This is if we're given an empty, so we could do something just in the beginning where if like if root is null, or well, it's actually going to be an array with nodes, right? I think it expects an empty array. I'm not positive. Was someone just about to say something?
No, I'm just trying to figure out which library it would be.
Oh, I thought Fernando had an idea.
Yeah, I just was trying to say that we need to check the root is undefined or no.
And you just return it an empty array if so?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. That makes sense. All right, cool.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that is
So if there's no root at all, then yeah.
I always wondered why that was the case. Now I know.
Did you solve this one, Fernando?
Yeah, I solved it with Python.
All right, cool. You want to share? I'd be curious
Sure.
to see it. Is it the same thing? Similar?
Yeah. Let me share my screen. Can you see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
So for this problem, I just use recursion. So for each step and the I'm calling this pre-order method. I just define these pre-order values as an empty list. I check if the root is just it doesn't exist. It's none. I just return this empty list. In other case, I just add the value on the root and iterate for each child in the root children collection or array that we have, and the pre-order values, I just join each subarray that are going to get for calling the same method. So this is the recursion part. So I just call in the same method with each child root, and yeah, I just return the pre-order values, or just the values that I have. For Python, we can just say this is like a join operation on JavaScript. So
You could just do plus and it combines arrays, huh?
yeah, that's the interesting part in Python.
Huh.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, this is like we have join JavaScript.
Yeah. That's cool. Nice.
Okay.
Thank you. I like Python. The more I see it, the more I like Python, man.
Yeah, I like.
Looks so clean.
Right?
Yeah, you can write faster. Just for interviews, because sometimes I have some delays with JavaScript or Java. With Java in the some define the type, and yeah, Python is more clear.
Yeah. Yeah, I know some people who started with other languages in the competitions, and they're like, yeah, I'm never going back to anything. I like Python the best. Like, I'm using Python from now on. Cool. Yeah, we spent most of the time just going over that problem right there. That's totally fine. We have, we could do the medium tomorrow, though. We only have 10 minutes, which is, let me just check it out, though. I'll post it again. I know Daniel wanted to be here. He's still a little sick. Let's check it out, though. Path in zigzag labeled binary tree. So in an infinite binary tree where every node has 2 children, the nodes are labeled in row order. In the odd numbered rows, so the first, third, fifth, the labeling is left to right. While in the even number rows, second, fourth, sixth, the labeling is right to left. Given the label of a node in this tree, return the labels in the path from the root of the tree to the node with that label. So if the root node is 1, then there's 3, 2. So in the even row, the labeling is, the ordering is right to left. In the odd rows, the ordering is from left to right. Wow. And in an infinite binary tree where every node has 2 children. What is an infinite binary tree? So you could kind of, so if you're given the label, so basically the first height is going to be 1, height 2 is going to be 2 and 3, height 3 is going to be 4 to 7, height 4 is going to be 8 to 15. Okay, so I could see some use of like squared, like using the power of 2 to figure out what numbers are in that row. But so like with the 14, how do you determine if you need to go from 1 to 2 or 1 to 3 if the label that you're given is 14? That's the tricky part, right? So I guess if you're given the label of 14 and you know 14 is within the range of 2 to the third, 2 times 2 times 2, 2 to the 4, so 2 times 2 times 2 times 2, so 16. And if 14 comes in the second half of 8 to 15, so we have like 8, 9, 10, 11 is the first half, which would be on the right side. 14 would come on the left side. Yeah, this one involves several steps. Definitely doable, but a nice one, a challenging one. Did anyone solve this one?
I tried. Just I figured out that you can divide by 2, like 14 divided by 2, you have 7, and 7 is the opposite of 4, so you need to find a way to get that 4, and after you have 4, you also again divide by 2. 4 divided by 2, you have 2, and 2 is good because you don't have to invert, and after that you divide 2 by 2 and you have 1. Yeah, you can have this list just dividing by 2, but you need to figure out how to invert, like how to pass from 7 to 4 or 6 to 5. Like if you have 13 divided by 2 is 6, but the path is 5 for 13, so you need to invert from 6 to 5. Yeah, it's like you just need to divide by 2, but at the same time you need to invert because these arrows are inverting these paths. But I couldn't figure out the part that invert the values.
So what if you do 10 divided by 5? 10 divided by 2 equals 5, I mean. So let's just say 9 divided by 2 is 4.5, so that would be on that side. 11 divided by 2 is 5.5. So if you seal that. Alright. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, so there's definitely, there seems like there's some sort of mathematical solution to this, so that would be way better than actually traversing the tree.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's interesting. Alright, cool. Well, we only have a couple more minutes for tonight, so I'll go ahead and leave it for tomorrow. I'll repost this one so we have more time. I'm going to try to actually make some time to do it, and then, we'll go from there. So we'll keep, I don't know if we're ever going to make it to the hards. If next week for the contest I add more hards, what if we, because last week we actually had someone share the hard, remember? That was nice. So I didn't add the hard, but if this week comes up and then we're going to add a couple more hards, I'm going to start just focusing on hard, man. I think we know enough where we could actually bust out the hards, even if it takes a week. You know,
So you break up the days. We do this, what, 4 days a week?
4 days a week.
Yeah, we need to break down the hard.
Yeah, start handing out the hards. Like, Fernando, you do hard number 2, I'll do hard number 1. Aditya does hard number 3. Soon we're gonna have too many hards. Liz does hard number 4.
Okay.
What?
Not the hard stage yet.
All right, easy then. I remember when Daniel first started doing easies, like maybe like a couple months ago. He didn't even think he was ready for mediums. He was like, "I'm not ready for mediums." He's like, "I just want to do easies for now." And he was still like, easies weren't like easy for him, you know. Now he's busting out the easies and he's thinking through a medium every single day. So to see that kind of growth of just, but he shows up every day.
Yeah.
You know, that's what it is, consistency. Eventually you look back like a month from now and you're like, oh yeah, I used to not be able to do this. That's crazy. I could like solve it every day now. Yeah. It's wild. Love it. All right, cool. Thanks everyone for coming. I will see y'all tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your nights.
See ya.
See ya.
Thank you. See ya.